nervous because I'm here now.
Hey guys, welcome into another episode of 410 Sports Talk. James Haskell along with my co-host Glenn Martin, and it is finally here. We have been progressing through this week, Glenn, with some awesome guests, with Evan Washburn, Titan Upload, of course, Joshua Harris. So make sure you guys go check that out. But if you didn't know, it's playoff week, Ravens, Titans coming up, and we're excited to give our breakdown of the game, give our preview and our insight. But before we go any further, we want to mention a couple things here. One, huge shout out to our three new patrons. Of course, a familiar friend, Rich France. We appreciate the support. Daniel Kunimoto, the current champion of our weekly challenge, a shout out. And Troy Huff, of course, another faithful patron and member of Ravens Flock. So thank you very much. And at the very last, before we dive into this game, Glenn, I want to give you guys a second to pause, subscribe to the channel, and then also make sure to take a look at our Patreon. We do a daily post, which you think is really cool and people are liking a lot. So go check that out. But Glenn, let's provide some context into this awesome, exciting matchup that we have coming up here in a couple days.
Yeah, so luckily enough for the Ravens, it seems like they're starting to get healthy at the correct time. I know Jimmy Smith missed a handful of games this year, and we know the importance he brings. He's back at practice. Yannick Ngakoue, who the Ravens traded for to bolster that pass rush, he's now back at practice. And we know that the speed that he brings off the edge and how helpful that can be in this game. And then Patrick McCarry, who's turned into a very important cog in this system, a guy that last season I probably wouldn't have anticipated he'd be that important of a cog. He kind of struggled in last year's playoff game, but certainly a boost getting him back at practice and taking over, it looks like, for Colon Castillo from last week.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are the big three as far as health goes, and that's a great sign. The list is shrinking at the right time.
Yes,
right?
Yes. Now, as far as, let me just clear over some guys who did not practice today.
Yeah.
Running back Mark Ingram did not practice, but his was not considered injury related, so probably just a vet day. This one's a little bit worrisome. DJ Fluker not practicing with a knee. Now, we know he missed a lot of practice last week, but was ultimately able to suit up. So hopefully that's the case this week. And then also Brandon Williams did not practice, but his is believed to be not injury related as well. So right now, all good news as long as Fluker is still on the right track to start.
Yeah, now I do want to say on the other side of the ball, the Tennessee Titans list, I mean, isn't out of control, but it is not as clean right now as the Ravens is, I guess, one way that I would put it.
Okay.
One of their tackles, Dennis Kelly, this is Thursday, didn't practice. A guard, Roger Saffold, didn't practice with an ankle. A big name, A.J. Brown, with a knee and a hand, did not practice. Once again, it's Thursday, guys. Adoree Jackson with a knee, didn't practice. Center Ben Jones, he's a limited participant in Wednesday, but looks like he went, but he's on the list as well. And then we talked about this with our guest from Titan Upload, Mark. Is that Steven Gostowski? How do you say it?
Gostkowski.
Gostkowski. There you go. Yeah. He just came back to practice, but it's that kicking game is definitely fluid for them. So the big name for me, I think, is AJ Brown and Adoree Jackson. Big names there. And then, of course, when you have a lot of offensive linemen on the injury report at this late in the season, it's a concern when you're so heavily reliant on the run game like the Titans are.
No doubt. You want that unit practicing. I'm sure some of these guys are vet days. I don't know exactly all of the injuries, but some may be just precautionary. Like I anticipate AJ Brown certainly to be out there.
Now, none of them said not injury related, though.
Okay.
The ones that I named.
All right. Well, then, I mean, look, I'm sure if Vrabel could have his choice, he wants his starting offensive line practicing this week together. I mean, I think there's no doubt about that. But as far as do I think they're going to miss the? I don't think AJ Brown's going to miss this game, but yeah, nonetheless, it could affect their preparation. So good news for the Ravens, right?
Yeah, I mean, with a guy like Marquise with so much speed on the outside, and Adoree, who's also a speedster.
Yeah.
But if he's if he's got a limp knee there, that could be a serious concern, because I know that they're looking for him to match Hollywood stride for stride, who is looking healthy these days.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So now we're going to get into some of the stats for the two teams, and I'm going to start off. Let's just get into some of the Tennessee Titans, because they have a very similar it looks like similar team to us on the offensive side of the ball, but a little different on the defensive side. So I'm going to start with the passing attack. Ryan Tannehill's thrown for 3,653 yards this season, which ranks 23rd in the league. 33 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. Those 33 touchdowns are 8th in the league. As far as rushing the ball, we know they get it done here. 2,690 yards on the ground, which is 2nd in the league. And then 26 touchdowns on the ground, also ranks 2nd. I bet you can guess who's first. As far as defensively, they got a tough time, Jimbo. They're 29th in the league against passing yards, giving up 4,439 yards this season, and 31st in the league, giving up 36 touchdowns thus far. And as far as on the ground, a little bit better. They've given up 1,933 yards on the ground, which ranks 19th, and they've given up 18 rushing touchdowns, which is 22nd in the league. So defensively, they've struggled. There's just no doubt about it. Now, one area where they've done pretty well is forcing turnovers. They forced 23 turnovers on the season, which is 7th in the league, while only turned the ball over 12 times themselves, which is 2nd. So as you can see, that really, if they're not turning another team over, they're struggling to get stops.
Yeah, certainly. It's gonna be an interesting one, and I think that this brings us to our challenge of the week. Before I get into it, actually, I just want to mention one thing that you brought up off the air is that we have made a roster move, and I think this was previous to the Bengals game, if I'm not mistaken, but we just omitted it. Jaron Curse, he's a large safety at 6'4". Previously played for the Detroit Lions, is a guy that we've added to the roster to help bolster the back end of the defense. But I'm excited about our challenge for the week this week, Glenn, because I think it's going to be really interesting. The reason I think it's going to be so interesting is because people, in different media outlets they're all across the board on different ends of the spectrum as far as how this game will turn out, whether it will be a ground and pound, low possession, low scoring game, or we've seen both teams really be involved in shootouts, and we know that both teams can put up points. So our challenge this week is for you to guess the combined total score of the game. Now, of course, it's not a first come, first serve where if you see somebody else take the score, there's only going to be one winner. The closest guess or guesses will be shouted out on the show. Or if there is an exact guess, whether that's one or multiple people, of course, those people will be the winners. So let us know. Of course, Glenn and I will reveal our total scores at the end of the show, but make sure to leave in the comment section your total combined score for this game.
Yeah, and it'd be nice if you gave us both scores, and then obviously we could do the math if you'd like to do it that way. But so just so everybody knows, if you think it's gonna be 31-30, the combined would be 61, and that's what we're grading. And like Jimmy said, if multiple people guess the same number, multiple people will be shouted out and will get the credit they deserve. Because I think this is interesting. Yeah, I think I could see it going multitude of ways. I could see both teams coming out a little tight and starting slow, and that causing that number to go down a little bit as far as total score, or they could come out high. I mean, these teams have been in a lot of shootouts, both high-scoring offenses. I could see it also being a high-scoring game. So, yeah, that's going to be interesting to see, and see if Daniel can continue to defend his title and his throne. But before we get started in the next one, I just want to briefly go over the final rankings for the Ravens, offense and defense. Offensively, they threw for just 2,739 yards, which ranked dead last in the league. However, did have 27 passing touchdowns, which was 13th. As far as on the ground, number 1 in the league, running for 3,071 yards and 24 touchdowns on the ground, ranks 3rd in the NFL. So certainly getting it done there. And as far as defensively goes, against the pass, the Ravens rank 6th, giving up 3,536 yards, and 5th in touchdowns, giving up 22 passing touchdowns. Not bad on the year when you're top 5 in that category. Rushing, they've given up 1,740 yards, which ranks 8th, and just 12 rushing touchdowns all season, which is 4th in the league. So, I mean, Jimmy, you can see that one team is pretty heavily lopsided, and the other one seems to be a little bit more even, a little bit more, it's a more of a, what am I looking for?
More balanced.
More balanced. That's the word I'm looking for. More balanced team. Absolutely. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and I tell you what, man, I feel like every preview show this year I've jumped ahead, and then you've brought it back. Thankfully, I just omitted bringing
That's all
up
right.
the Ravens stats. So I appreciate
And
you
also,
doing
and
that.
I wanted to touch on Jaron Curse really quickly 1 second,
Yeah.
because you're right. He's a big guy. He's a guy that looks to have been cut for disciplinary reasons and not really performance based. At least that's what I'm looking at. On the season, he did have 59 combined tackles before he was released by Detroit. And I think with his size, I mean, this is a big safety, 6'4", 215 pounds. You'd be hard pressed to find many safeties bigger than that. He could just play a part in tackling these big guys that Tennessee has, and he could find himself having a role in this week's game. So I just wanted to briefly go over that.
Yeah, you could see him down in the box, certainly, right, doing some damage, and
Absolutely.
instead of a guy like Earl Thomas out there, Jaron Curse might give us a little bit better of an opportunity to make that
Yeah.
tackle instead of being spun around like a ladle.
Yeah.
That was a tough one. But
Yeah.
all right, so let's get into some offensive concerns and questions here. And this one, you talked about it, Glenn. And so I want to touch on a little more. Makari is back at practice, but has been out of the rotation, of course, as you mentioned, since he had the back start to flare up. Do you automatically slide him back in for this game as the vet, or do you stick with Colon Castillo? Now, before you answer, you kind of touched on it, but remember last year against Jeffrey Simmons, there were a couple times where Makari ended up backwards on his belly and didn't have a great performance last year. So I want to know your thoughts on, are you riding with the guy that's been in there at least the past week, or are you going automatically just back to Makari?
Yeah, I think me personally, you go back to Makari. Last year, he was an undrafted rookie guy playing out of position, not really familiar with the NFL, much less playing center in a playoff game. He made huge strides in the offseason. He's definitely gotten bigger, definitely gotten stronger. He's made, I mean, just an amazing amount of strides as far as his technique and his performance on the field. I think it's a totally different player now that Makari's back. But I tell you what, if he was forced to miss, it is nice to know that they'd have depth at that position. But no, I think if Makari's back at practice, as long as he's able to practice in full, I mean, even if he was just limited, I still think he's the best option. But it sounds to me like he's back practicing in full. And if that's the case, I think it's a no-brainer. You go back to Makari.
All right, fair enough. Now let's keep this thing going here.
Yeah, let me ask you something, because I was watching ESPN when this popped up, and it kind of surprised me to see it. But they asked Keyshawn Johnson his top 3 most important pass catchers heading into Wildcard weekend.
And he said he was number 1, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, he did point out the swag, though, but he was making catches. His chin strap wasn't even strapped because he said that's that swag. That's that swag. So no, but I thought it was funny. But Marquise Brown was rated as his number 2 most important pass catcher heading into this weekend. And I was surprised, but I guess I shouldn't have been. I mean, I think last year there were 7 drops by the pass catchers, whether it be tight end, receiver, or running back last year. That's an insanely high number, and that led to a lot of drives ending early and points not being put on the board. So when you hear a Titans defense that's really bad against the pass, okay, we need some. Do you agree that with Keyshawn that Marquise Brown is that important to this Ravens offense?
I want to agree, but I think that our passing game stops and goes as Mark Andrews goes. That's just the way that it is. I think Mark Andrews is our most gifted pass catcher. I think that he is our most difficult matchup because of his size, his technique, and his athleticism. He's not just big, but he's extremely athletic, and he's got great hands. So for me, as far as I can understand his point, but I think clear and above for this game, based on the Titans' track record, as far as being, unable to defend tight ends and how reliant we are on Mark, I think the Ravens' passing game rises and sets with Mark Andrews. So that's how I feel about it. But I want to ask you this, unless you want to dispute my answer here, which is fine. But I want to ask you.
Well, I do kind of want to dispute your answer.
All right, go ahead.
But I respect your answer because he did have Gronk in his, so it doesn't have to be just receivers. So I respect you going with a tight end, and I agree. But man, I tell you, as good as Marquise has been down the stretch in these last 5 games, the fact that he has more receiving touchdowns than Mark Andrews, which I did not think would happen before the season started, They have identical amount of receptions for the year, both having 58, but at season's end. And Marquise has a little more yards than him. I think that as of late, Marquise has proven to be the bigger. I think that the fact that he is our main big play threat, I feel like that is more important right now. So I tend to agree with him. But look, I mean, we're picking between the obvious two best, and really you can make an argument with both. So
now this is what I wanted to ask you though. Let's stay with the passing game based on their terrible. I was cracking up because Jeremy Kahn said, other than their ability to stop the run and stop the pass, the Titans got a great defense. Right? Like they're not good defensively. And in the past, they're even worse. So a lot of Titans fans and Titans pundits have been talking about how we're 31st in the league in passing. I think that they're focused just on the yards. But do you see the Ravens staying true to who they are as far as running the football? Or do you see them trying to exploit an obvious weakness that is the pass defense of the Tennessee Titans?
Man, I really hope. I hope that they stick, because I think they can. I think they can do both while also sticking to their game plan. I don't think I ever want to see them throw the ball as many times as they. Certainly in the beginning of the year, it seemed like we were throwing the ball way too often, and then last year, it was insane. But
didn't he have 50 throws, Lamar, in the last?
It was over
game?
50, but I can understand why in that situation. Once it got to the second half, the game started to kind of dictate. But in the beginning of the game, please, Greg Roman, stick to the game plan, stick with what works. I saw a lot of the games in this last five, a lot of the plays down these last five stretch, certainly in the beginning, are plays designed to get Lamar Jackson comfortable, get him going, rollouts, easy throws, just to get him confident, get the butterflies out and just get into the rhythm of the game. That's what I want to see. If he's throwing early on, I better see it off play action. I mean, my goodness. But to say that they're not going to, that they can get through this game and not take advantage of that big weakness, I think they have to take advantage of the fact that they're weak defending the pass. I mean, they look lost out there sometimes. And if they're dead last in the league in sacks, I think they had a sack last week, which was like the first one they had in 5 games. So let's not pretend that, Jadeveon Clowney's strapping up for this one. He's still out. So I think
surprise.
Yeah. I still think you absolutely have to take advantage of that, but do it in a smart way. Do it off play action. Do it in advantageous positions. Don't try not to do it where it's obvious you're throwing, where you're forced yourself into 3rd and long, and then you have to. So you do it in a smart way, but absolutely the big play is so important. Josh Harris talked about it. The big play is so important to this offense that I think you have to take advantage, but it's more about efficiency than volume.
Fair enough. So you touched on this, so I want to ask you. I want to follow up on this question. You talked about Lamar and him wanting to feel comfortable. So to me, that's a key in this game, is getting him comfortable early. What do you think Roman will do to make sure Lamar is comfortable early on in this game?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like I said, you do the rollouts, you do the play actions, you give him a 2 reads and then run. I mean, that's what I would do. A high-low read. It's pretty simple. I mean, you just make it easier for him, because I think that's the issue with the first one. He was trying to do too much. He had butterflies. He's a young guy. By the way, shout out to Lamar. I believe today's his birthday. 24th. That's right. To the most humble superstar I've ever met or seen. But yeah, I think that he just was so wound up. He wanted to do too much. He said it himself. He wanted to do too much instead of letting the game come to him. Plays are going to come to him. So I think Roman's job is to just make him comfortable. And you do that with those easy throws, those play actions. I mean, look, this defense can't get pressure when they know you're throwing. So if you mean to tell me you're going to throw in a play action, you're going to be able to sit back there all day. So, I mean, Roman's job, as long as he doesn't, as long as the team executes, Roman's job should be pretty easy and pretty straightforward.
Yeah, for me, what I think is really important, if I can make a comparison here, I'm no expert, but I try and act like I can do some distance running. And for me, I'm one of those people that the hardest part for me is mile 1 into mile 2. Once I get my groove going, I feel like like a diesel engine. I just get rolling, right? And I can stick with it. But it's about getting that heart rate up. So I feel like just a couple plays where Lamar gets that heart rate up, he's feeling his blood pumping through his veins, and then he's like, all right, we got this thing now. The jitters are out. Let's roll. Right. So I think it's just about getting him through that first peak, if you will. But one of the things that you brought up is Lamar's stats in these previous 2 games with the Titans aren't the greatest. He's 51.5% completion percentage. He's got 5 turnovers, and he's been sacked 11 times by, like you said, a team that has a terrible defense.
Mm-hmm.
So while returning at the same time, while returning from COVID, he has the highest QBR. So what type of performance do we need from Lamar in order to come out with a victory in this game?
Well, to me, it's simple. We don't even need Lamar to be the insanely, we don't even need necessarily Lamar to be peak Lamar. We just need him to be okay. I look at this. They barely were able to come out with a victory last year in overtime. And to me, he still didn't play like the Lamar we're used to seeing. And again, I don't say that Lamar has to have, this perfect QBR, which he did twice last year. He doesn't even need to have his best game. To me, he just has to have a good game by his standards and not have a poor game. I mean, I would venture to say that the 2 games against the Titans are probably his 2, worst stacked games next to each other, outside maybe the Chargers game too. But I mean, it's hard. You're hard pressed to find a game where he doesn't play phenomenal, much less, at least pretty good. So to me, I think as long as Lamar Jackson doesn't have a poor game, if he just plays okay, the Ravens win. I mean, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think exactly what you said and what Josh said is important. And I'm glad that Lamar is the one that is also preaching that message, is that letting the game come to him is going to keep him from trying to be Superman. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And an average game in Lamar's eyes is incredible in everyone else's. Right. So like just doing the best that he can do and not comparatively speaking is already going to put him at the head of the pack.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So that's all he's got to do is just let it come to him. And because of his abilities, the plays will be there. But one of the other questions I want to ask you here, Glenn, is I've been thinking about this lately, and I'll give you my answer, but I want to get yours too. Everyone is focused on Lamar Jackson, J.K. Dobbins, Mark Andrews, and of course Marquise Brown. Every once in a while, people talk about Gus Edwards. But are there any other offensive players that you see out there that the media isn't talking about that could have a big impact in this game?
Yeah, I think certainly the return of Willie Snead could be important from a standpoint of first downs and having that guy, the toughness he brings. And but as far as big plays goes, a guy I'm excited to see is Devin Duvernay, man. I want to see if Greg Roman maybe has something up his sleeve that they've been practicing. He always mentions how, and he mentioned it again today, he talked about how they always have this large group of plays, and they often only use a very small portion of the plays that he has available, that they have prepared for, and that they've been repping all year. Well, I want to see some of those plays that we haven't seen all year that you've been practicing come out. And I think the beneficiary of those could be a guy like Duvernay, who every time he seems to have the ball in his hands, he impresses us. I mean, really, I can't think of a time where he had the ball where he didn't make the most of what we saw. There's never been a time where he had the ball and I go, man, I wish he would have cut back inside. He could have gotten a couple more. Whereas there's a lot of guys on our team where I've made that statement. So I want to see more from Devin Duvernay, and I'm hoping that Roman's got something up his sleeve. How about you?
Yeah, so just to add to your point, I think that it's fair to say that Duvernay is certainly the most dangerous wide receiver we have at this point with the ball in his hands.
Yes.
Now, naturally, you would think that it's Marquise, but like you said, getting the most out of every opportunity, Duvernay is far and above the best at it right now. And he's like, yeah, he's a natural gifted runner with the football. So for me, though, I've been riding this train all year. You know where I'm going.
You going with Gus?
I'm not going with 35.
What?
I'm going with 8-8, Ocho, Dez Bryant throwing at the X. I think that Dez Bryant can in few targets, but I think that he can take advantage of a small duo in the corners that the Titans have. While tough, small guys at 5'11 a piece and a $190 and $185. Dez Bryant, 6'2", 220, and I'd argue that he's probably a little more than 220 at this point. And I don't mean that he's getting chubby by any means. So I want to see, just like we saw in, let's see, what was his first game that he was activated when he got a couple short balls?
Let's see. And after the Dallas game, right?
It was, yeah, right after the Dallas game.
Yeah, because that was supposed to be his first game up, right? I think it was supposed to be. Let's see.
No, he had already come up. Anyway, I can't remember what game it was.
After Dallas, it was Cleveland.
Anyway, so in whatever game it was, Des Bryant was getting some short passes,
Yeah,
and he
yeah.
was being physically imposing on the corners. He was making them pay every time they wanted to tackle him. I want to
Yeah.
see that with these guys because Adoree's not big, and Malcolm Butler's not. I don't think they want the imposition of having to tackle Des Bryant a couple times a game. And so I think that he'll have a big impact in the red zone and also taking advantage of these small guys. So I think it'll definitely be interesting.
Yeah, Adoree would definitely have his hands full on the outside trying to deal with the man the size of Des Bryant.
I
There's no
think
doubt
he'd
about it.
much rather match up against a guy like Marquise and deal with his speed than Dez's
He's a
physicality.
that's a speed guy.
Right.
You know, there's two track stars out there running. But the last question I have on the offensive side, you know, everyone talks about Derrick Henry, and I agree. Clearly the best running back in the league. But as we said when we talked to Evan, they're not the best running team in the league. It's clearly the Ravens. There's no doubt about it. And when I look across I'm thinking about from just comparing the two. You know, Derrick Henry, while he did have success last game running for 130, that success came without Calais Campbell in there, without Brandon Williams in there. Those guys are not only back in there, but they're healthy. And as Calais said, they're eager and they're excited. He knows that this is the reason he was brought here. So I have hope that the Ravens have something in store for Derrick Henry. But when I look on the other side of the ball, what hope as a Tennessee fan would you have in stopping this rush attack when you look at their last few outings and you think, man, Houston's not a very good team, right? Like J.J. Watt just came out and apologized for wasting one of Deshaun Watson's years in his career. Like he apologized. How often do you hear a defensive player apologize for wasting a year, right? Well, that offense, that wasted offense scored 38 points last week against this defense. And then the week before, Green Bay Packers, they're pretty good. I'll give you that. But they scored 40 points in that game the previous week. And mind you, I mean, they could have scored 100, it seemed like.
Yeah, they were in cruise control the whole second half pretty much.
Exactly. I mean, this game was over very, very early. And if they wanted to, it could have gotten out of hand much, much quicker. So I just feel like so my question to you is, Jimmy, are the Ravens going for over 400 again? Because I could see – look, Jermaine Pratt pissed the Ravens off last week by coming out and saying they're going to stop the run to the playoffs and it's over. What'd they do? They ran for the fourth most yards in the history of the league in a single game. I'm sure they're pissed off. John didn't forget the logo. Are we going to go for another 400?
You know what? Book it. Book it right now. We're going for over 400. I was trying to think of how I'm going to answer this question, and I'm just going to answer it emotionally. Book it. It could happen. I think it is very important for us to win the time of possession more in this game than maybe any other game because they have the ability to do the same thing as far as their style of play goes on the offensive side of the ball. So yeah, I think our rush attempts will be high. I think whether that's Lamar or, our two stables or two guys in the backfield, I think, So I said this a couple shows ago, when Lamar Jackson is playing like this, you can only do one thing, and that's just lay back and go see Jesus, right? And I feel like that's how our Russian attack is right now. Like, what else are you going to do?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we got some bruisers out there, and they're playing at a high level. And just last point on that, 2 weeks ago, again, when they lost to the Packers, A.J. Dillon, a rookie, had 21 carries for 124 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Aaron Jones had 10 carries for 94 yards. I mean, I think we have a better running game than the Green Bay Packers. I'll just go out on a limb and say that.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I think that is fair to say, Glenn. I don't think you're reaching there. But the other thing I just want to add to that is that, the element that not the element of surprise, but the added element to our running game that is J.K. Dobbins and the emergence of him, his speed, his explosiveness, his balance. He's so much different than a Mark Ingram was last year.
Yeah.
Right. So, and then I think he further complicates the issue with, then you got the prospect of, the prospect of seeing Lamar or JK coming around the side or taking up the middle. And then you got to deal with Gus, who's 230,
No, thanks. He's a little Derrick Henry.
Exactly. So yeah, I think we're going over 400. Wait, I didn't get your answer though. You think we're going over 400?
I think this game is personal. They're going to leave no doubt, and I just don't see that they have the guys to slow us down unless it would have to be aided by us shooting ourselves in our own foot. But we've talked enough on the offense. I got to
Wait,
ask.
last thing here. Do you remember the Titans when he's like, you blitz all night?
Yes,
like,
yes.
I feel like it's going to be
They
one
don't
of those.
Get another yard.
He gets that evil voice in him,
Oh,
too.
yeah.
Like,
Oh, man, he
makes
gets me
the
fired
dead
up.
with that one. My goodness.
All right, well,
so let's go to the defensive
defense.
side of the ball.
Yeah, and let me talk to you about this real quick, because this, to me, is a huge issue going into this game. It was a big-time issue last game, the yak. And I don't mean just yards after catch, which that's important, but also yards after first contact, because we know, and we're very proud of our Ravens. So I believe for finishing the year 1-2 in forced fumbles, meaning Peters and Humphrey, but not against these guys. I mean, not against A.J. Brown, Corey Davis, Jonnu Smith, and, of course, Derrick Henry. They have to prioritize tackling, in my opinion, over stripping the ball in this game. Just in this game. Got to get these guys on the ground. So, Jimmy, when you look how big these guys are. I mean, they're gigantic. They have strong hands. They attack the ball at its highest point. I mean, are you confident that the Ravens, who struggled tackling in the last game, have learned from that meeting, and they're going to prioritize tackling over stripping in this one?
Well, I'm just going to say overall, I'm confident in us in this game, in every aspect of the game. I think that, like you said, it being personal, and there being an additional, not that there's, you're motivated to play every playoff game, but I just feel like there's something there. There's something there in this game. We got an axe to grind, and I think it will cause for an increased mental sharpness. And so, yeah, I'm confident that we'll be able to wrap these guys up. Well, even Marcus Peters is going to make a couple tackles in this game and wrap some guys up. But the only it's interesting, because to me, the guy I'm actually most concerned about is Patrick Queen just needs to start wrapping up more. There's been a couple times where he's in position to make the play and he gets spun off of, or, the guy bounces off. He makes the initial hit, but it's almost like he's tackling with his arms tied behind his back.
Yeah, and that's inexcusable. He's not a rookie no more, right?
No, absolutely. And that's what made Ray so great. For people that don't know, Ray Lewis was an all-state wrestler, had the grip of, one of the strongest grips in the NFL. Patrick, you need to wrap up, man. So anyway, it's
harder now. We understand it is harder now with limited practice and all that stuff to work on those kinds of things.
And he's such a young linebacker.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
You know what I mean? So that's definitely something. Ray was born to be a linebacker. I mean, I don't even know if he did anything else from the time he was 5 years old.
That's right.
Yeah,
no doubt. So the other thing I want to talk about, because I agree, I mean, tackling is huge in this one, but Derrick Henry, I want to talk about him because to me, he is one of a kind in a couple of ways. I mean, not only with his size, his speed, the agility that he has at that size, it's incredible. But also the unprecedented workload that he receives from his coach is something I haven't seen before. I mean, we talked about it. Yeah, the Ravens run the ball better than them, but they did it last week with 7 different guys carrying the ball. Whereas last week for the Titans, it was just 2. It was Derrick Henry a whole lot, and a sprinkling of Ryan Tannehill on the side. And that's pretty much what it is every single week. It doesn't matter, Jimmy, if for the first 25 carries, Derrick Henry has 50 yards. Because guess what? He's getting that number 26 carry from Mike Vrabel, and he might take it for 50 yards, and then all of a sudden his day looks pretty darn special. So to me, you can never be comfortable with Derrick Henry in the backfield. It doesn't matter his level of success. He will continue to get carries. It doesn't matter if you stuff the first 20. Vrabel gives them 21 and 22. You always have to be aware that he will get the ball. It doesn't matter the situation. I mean, they're one of the few teams that will run the ball on 3rd and medium because he's just that good. So my question to you is, does the return of Brandon Williams, of Calais Campbell, does that make enough difference to slow down the best running back in the league?
If this were a series like the NBA, I would say that he's probably going to end up averaging his season average. But for one game, I think so. I think for one game in which we have, these 2 guys back, the addition of Calais, who's familiar with Derrick, being that they were both in the AFC South. And once again, the heightened mental sharpness, I think the Ravens just seem tuned in this week. I mean, from the pressers, and of course we're getting healthy. I don't know. They just seem like a more mature crew than last year with more to fight for. And those motivational factors make a difference in the NFL, I think, more than any other sport. So yeah, I think for one game, if you're asking me for one game out of us to do some sort of containment of Derrick Henry, not stop him, but contain him, I think we got what it takes.
Yeah, and it's I agree that the additions of Calais and Brandon Williams, I mean they're insane. I mean you can't
Yeah.
undersell what those two guys
Yeah, you
bring.
got Pro Bowler and a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I mean they are incredible, but at the same time, it's more to me than just those guys returning. I think it's now, and Wink touched on it in his press conference today, the ability to now have depth on the defensive front. People forget that. I think Derek Wolfe and maybe I'm actually looking at the box score from the previous meeting, and I'm only seeing as far as defensive linemen, like
I
hand
think
in
there
the
was only
dirt.
2, right?
Just 2, Derek Wolfe and Justin Ellis.
Right.
And if you remember in that game, Derek Wolfe seemed like a one-man wrecking crew in there, and they really did a pretty good job holding Derrick Henry in check until that long run in overtime, which ultimately won on the game. So I think what it brings more than just the dominant play by Williams and Calais Campbell, but also it just gives a chance for him to rest guys, get guys in and out of the game, and keep them fresh. So where not only are is the play of Williams and Calais elevating the team, but also the play of Wolf is going to be elevated because he's going to be coming in fresher and more rested. Ellis, I think this is a game where yeah, absolutely. I think this is a game where they go heavy in the front 7 as far as their active lists and inactives. I think that they're going to go light in some other areas that may surprise people, and maybe in the secondary, and kind of bank on the fact that Jimmy is all the way back and that Peters can go the full distance. Because I think the utmost importance is keeping the front 7 rotated, healthy, and fresh to keep throwing fresh bodies at Derrick Henry and try and slow him down.
Yeah, great point. Absolutely great point. I think that's going to make a huge difference. And then one other thing to add to that, if you think about it, we got a rookie at starting at inside linebacker. Now he's got a second crack at a team that he's already seen. I think being a rookie, that's a huge difference. I wouldn't say, while it helps every player, but a guy that's going through his first time around in the league, between your very first time and your second time,
Big
huge
jump.
Improvements. Right.
Yep.
So
no doubt.
Now, one of the things that Wink brought up was Ryan Tannehill's athleticism. He mentioned he could probably play 3 different positions on the field, his speed skills, and he has the play action down, and his speed is really good. We saw last week he got in the end zone late in the game. I think that was their last touchdown to kind of put him over the top. But how much of an acquisition? This is I love this question, by the way, because this is a teaser for my defensive player of the game. But how much of an acquisition is Unique Ngakoue now that he appears to be healthy? When Wink said the pass rush needs to be violent and disciplined.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think I love that quote from Wink.
Yeah.
You need to pass rush with violent discipline. I love it. Like, because he's right. People sleep on Tannehill's athleticism and speed, and it kills people from a standpoint of buying time. But also, you mentioned the scrambling touchdown. I mean, they run that option as well. And when you have Derrick Henry back there, the defense has to kind of sell out to stop that guy, and often it leaves Tannehill for some easy first down and touchdown runs. So while he doesn't run a ton, he may get 4 or 5 carries. Don't be surprised if he gets 4 or 5 carries and he turns them into some important first downs and touchdowns. So I think the acquisition of Unique is for this exact reason. We needed more speed on the edge. Yep. And there is no doubt from the first moment he suited up as a Raven, he's our fastest pass rusher off the edge. No doubt about it. Now, there's also no doubt that Judon is playing at a much higher rate than he was earlier in the season. And I'm excited to see him in that game. So I think that it's a big game for everybody on the edge, including a guy like Tyus Bowser, who we touched on last week, who's been playing the run phenomenally, taking the line of scrimmage all the way to the sideline, not giving up an inch. Love to see that. But absolutely, Unique running down Tannehill on those bootlegs and those play action run. It could be the difference in the game where he gets a sack that most other guys couldn't, and it pushes him out of field goal range or forces a punt late in the game. Absolutely.
Yeah, I can't wait to see that one, certainly.
But yeah, hold on. Let me ask you a question because last year, I think a lot of people forget how they got us a little bit last year with a Derrick Henry trick play. They kind of bluffed a run up the middle, and then he paused, jumped, and threw it over the defenders, finding a wide open receiver in the end zone. What is your level of concern? Look, this is playoffs. It's win or go home. all the tricks are coming out. Are you worried we could see another trick play from the Titans?
I'm a little concerned about it. It's definitely, I'm sure, in the back of the Ravens' minds. But the real question is this: do you think that when Derrick Henry jumped, he said, "Kobe"? Do you think he did
I
a
hope
little
so.
bit?
I always say it. I know that.
That's right, man. No, but I think it's definitely a concern for the Ravens and in the back of their minds. So I mean, I guess that's the best way I can answer it. It's something they're going to be looking for in the red zone, late throughout the game. Hopefully we keep them out of the red zone, but assuming that a top 3 offense is going to get to the red zone a couple times in this game. So, but one of the things I wanted to ask you about is this kicking game. How do you see? I mean, the only way I can really phrase this question is, who do you think kicks for him? Is it going to be this rookie that they brought up? Is it going to be Gostkowski? Who's it going to be?
I think it ends up being ultimately Gostkowski just because of his experience. And he has made some big kicks back in his time with the Patriots and also his time early on with the Titans when he's already made, I think, 2 game winners. He's definitely made one early in the season. But there's no doubt he struggled, man. He only made 69% of his field goal opportunities this year and also missed a ton of extra points. I mean, this guy has not been he's not like the old Gostkowski from New England. This is a different
going
type
into
of guy.
Belichick's office asking for a raise. Remember that commercial?
Exactly. This is not him anymore. We know how fickle and how kind of fragile oftentimes the mind of a kicker can be. And when they lose it, man, they can really fall off the deep end. And I thought that was going to happen this year because he missed four consecutive kicks in the opening game. They stuck with him, and he ends up hitting the game winner later on. But there's no doubt that the kicking game could play a big part in this. If they end up having to go with Sam Sloman, yeah, he made the game winner last week, but that thing dinged off the uprights. It could have went either way at that point. And the reason he was cut is what I'm hearing. The reason he was cut from the Rams is because he kicks with a relatively low trajectory in comparison to other kickers, which leads to a lot of blocks. So if he has to kick anything with distance, which you already then have to lower trajectory anyway to get the length, I think it leaves an opportunity for a guy like Calais with his big frame and Derek Wolfe to get an arm up there. And I wouldn't be surprised if this game comes down to a missed kick because both these offenses are high powered and they're going to put up points. So I'm happy that the Ravens clearly have the best kicking unit.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Check out our daily posts, by the way, on Patreon. We talk about the us taking it. Sometimes we take for granted the Wolf Pack.
Yes.
But we definitely shouldn't. And especially in a game like this, we're all for grateful for him. So let's get to our keys to the game here. Yeah. Offensively, Glenn, I'm going to let you kick it off, and then I'll get to my offensive key to the game, and then we'll shift over to the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, to me, it's what Greg Roman talked about today in his press conference. It's all about finishing. Last year, people can say they had the the Titans have the Ravens number all they want. But the Ravens moved the ball at will last year. They had over 500 yards. Lamar Jackson had over 500 yards by himself. But the problem was they couldn't finish any of those drives. They stalled on 4th and short multiple times when it seemed like they got it every time during the regular season. They just weren't able to convert. And then in the red zone, they just couldn't finish the drive. So dominant between the 20s, but once they got inside the 20, couldn't get it done, despite the fact they were phenomenal at it, all year going into that game. So to me, it's all about finishing. I am confident that we're going to move the ball. There's just no doubt in my mind when you look at their defense that we're going to have an opportunity to score. But the question is, can they finish? Can they get it in the end zone? Can they get the job done? So to me, it's all about finish. What about you?
Yeah, so mine is going to be get Lamar in a rhythm early. And I think that's important because Josh talked about the rhythm, that Lamar, the internal clock that he has in his head, just like every quarterback has, that's unique to him. And Roman plays a big part in making sure Lamar accesses that and kind of gets in gear early. So mine is just like I mentioned before, get that heart rate up early, maybe get him a couple runs or whatever it is that works for Lamar to get him comfortable. I think we need to do it early, knowing that he's still a young quarterback, knowing that he's human, so he knows what happened last year. So in order to let the game come to him, we got to get him in rhythm early. Now, defensively, where are you going?
To me, it's one word, Jimmy. It's tackle. I mean, we saw A.J. Brown tow about 3-4 defenders into the, to get a big first down last year. Derrick Henry, we know how he tosses defenders, including Earl Thomas, who right now is really struggling to find a job. Doesn't seem like anybody wants him to be a teammate, but that's for another show. So to me, it's all about prioritizing getting these guys on the ground. Let's leave the punching out to maybe look if Humphrey catches the ball, I believe his name, or Adam Humphreys, I think is his name. If he catches the ball, yeah, punch at it, But if it's AJ Brown, if it's Corey Davis, if it's Jonnu Smith, if it's Derrick Henry, let's just worry first and foremost about getting these guys on the ground. Now, if you got them dogpiled and you got 3 guys, maybe then. But my main point is just get these guys on the ground, limit the yards after catch and yards after first contact.
Yeah, it's a great one. And mine is going to be, I'm going to steal mine from Wink because he is a lot smarter than me when it comes to defense. And he talked about recovering after big plays. I think that's going to be crucial because he mentioned that big plays are going to happen. I mean, this is a playoff.
Is this a message for the fans or this is a message? Because I feel like he was talking to me when he said that because
I think he was talking to his guys because look, we've seen often where a big play is followed up by another big play. Now that could be 2 big plays for the offense in a row, or a big play is followed last week. Now this wasn't a big play followed by a big play, but we've seen a big play followed up by a fumble or followed up by an interception, as the defense is
turnovers
recovering.
all the time. Yeah. Lead to big
play.
play.
I think that's going to be important for us to forget that play, move on to the next one and recover from it quickly. I think is going to be crucial. Now, maybe the most exciting part of the show. Let's get into our big game predictions. Who will have big games in this game, Glenn, for you offensively and defensively? I'll let you name your 2, and then I'll name my offensive and defensive guys.
All right, I'll start on defense, and it's the vet. It's the guy we've been missing in the back end of this defense for quite some time. Jimmy Smith is back, and I think he makes a big play. I think he gets an interception. The Titans don't turn the ball over a ton, but something tells me Jimmy Smith gets his hand on a tip ball, and he takes it the other way. I don't know. I'm not predicting he'll get in the end zone, but I do predict he gets his hands on an interception. Now, as far as offensively, this narrative's over, Jimbo. This Lamar Jackson can't win in the playoffs is done after this Sunday. Not only does Lamar Jackson play good, he plays very good. I say he gets 4 total touchdowns. I think it's 3. I think it's probably 3 through the air and 2. 3 through the air, 1 on the ground. I was about to split it, but I think I'm going to go 3 through the air. I think he gets some short touchdown passes. So I don't think we're going to see a ton of yards through the air, but we see efficiency through the air and we see scoring plays, most importantly, in the red zone. And I think Lamar gets 4 of those. What do you got?
All right. So mine is going to be exciting and I think a little bit out there. I've been sticking with my boy Yannick Ngakoue, and you kind of mentioned him. But I'm going with Yannick to have 2 sacks. I can see one of those being a rundown type sack.
Big loss.
Not only is he fast, but he is also, once again, just like Calais, familiar with this Titans team. Just last year he was in the AFC South with the Jags.
And talk about motivated.
Yeah, you're not kidding. So I think he gets 2. I'm not going to say a strip sack. I'm not going to get greedy with it like I did last time, but I think he gets 2, comes up big, makes himself a lot of money in his pocket for next year.
Yep.
And so I say he gets 2 sacks. Offensively, I mentioned this before, but I think that Dez Bryant, while I don't know if this is player of the game worthy, I only think he's going to have, I'm trying to be conservative here. I think he'll have 3 catches for a touchdown. Okay. But I think that Dez is going to have a big impact on this game. Maybe one of those other catches is in a 3rd and short scenario. And then of course, in the end zone, you can't beat that. So I'm going with Dez Bryant, 3 catches and a TD, throwing up the X. I think he's going to make these little guys.
I'd be so pumped. I would be so hyped if I saw that in the game. So yeah, well, let us know what you guys think about your big game predictions. And finally, we're going to get into our score prediction. I'm going to get us started here, Jimmy. I think this is a high scoring game. I think the Ravens, my key to the game offensively is finish. And I think they do just that. And for that reason, I have the Ravens winning 35-31. So as you can see, I anticipate not a lot of field goals in this one. I think they finish these drives, they punch it in. And that's the reason that they ultimately come out on top. What do you got?
Yeah. So my score is going to be 34-27. I see it as a game where I actually think that it's going to be a little, I might be getting a little arrogant here, but I think it's going to be a little bit more out of hand. I think those last 7 points might come
come late.
later in the game. So just based on the fact that it's the playoffs, they're not going to give up. They're going to keep fighting, and this is Vrabel's team. But I think the Ravens maintain control of this game from the beginning to the end. I just don't think that they have the firepower overall. They do offensively, but as a team, to stave off the Ravens any longer. I think we're gonna take them down this year. We're gonna take down the Titans. So 34-27.
I so hope so, because man, I am getting sick and tired of that one last bit of ammunition that the detractors of Lamar Jackson have.
So
unfairly so, of the 0-2 rec. Then what else will you say? What else, you Lamar Jackson haters, will you have to say when this Sunday he erases that little nugget of ammunition you may have against him? What else is left? I mean, I can't wait to see what they come up with, but let us know what you guys come up with for your big game predictions, your offense and defensive keys, and of course your score. But don't forget about our contest. We want to know, more importantly, I guess your score. Yeah, we want to know your score.
Yeah.
And look, I'd like to see it divided up, because I want to see who gets it closest. Now, if you just want to put a total number, we'll accept that as well. But I prefer it if you give us their score as well as our score. We can handle the math. And we'll talk soon.
See ya.
See ya.